Well, today it's Collitalks, Transformative Conversations. And do I have a very, very special, beautiful woman, brilliant at what she does and how many people she has helped over the years. And believe this or not, I was just like, wow, but I'm not surprised. 500,000 downloads of her podcast. So I am so honored, so privileged. I love her so much, and she has just helped so many people. And I know you are going to be absolutely thrilled that you get to listen to Netta today. Now, Netta came into my life through a marketing program, but we have remained in contact, and I am eternally grateful to her. I'm going to read from her bio here. She says, "Hi, I'm Netta, and I know what it's like to feel like you can't control your cravings. Up until my mid-50s or 40s, 50s, my weight, kept creeping up, and I was wondering, will I ever feel in control around food? I also started to struggle with constipation, joint pain, relentless fatigue, headaches, and uncomfortable bloating. I felt hopeless. When I was 45, I decided to take matters into my own hands and try something I'd never tried before. But I didn't know how. One day, my brother told me about a nutritional therapist he had worked with, so I took a chance and met with her. She suggested I cut sugar, flour, and all sweeteners for 2 weeks. I was shocked, and I resisted hard. There was no way I was going to give up chocolate and my favorite foods. I wanted to feel better, not worse. And comfort foods were the only things that were making me feel better about myself at that time. But eventually I realized that nothing changes if nothing changes. I had to get out of my own way because I didn't want to suffer anymore. So on a sunny July afternoon, as I was sipping on a sweet mocha slushie, I realized that I could do anything for 2 weeks. I was up for the challenge, even if it felt impossible for me. So I decided to cut sugar, sweeteners, and flour. I was so blown away by my results that I decided to mentor and guide midlife women through the same transformation that I had experienced. Today, I teach women over 50 how to ditch cravings so that they can slim down and finally feel in control of food. So Netta, wow, please, I just honor you and give you such a beautiful welcome. I'm honored to have you. I know so many women that are struggling with this situation. They are just sometimes almost to the point of losing it. So please, I know in the bio, I've explained a little bit here about you, but tell us more. I know the motivation behind this, but looking at you now, you're so beautiful as you always have been, and slim and vivacious. And I'm wondering, I can't imagine you any different. So what was going on?
Yes. Well, I suppose externally, I wasn't that different. I never really suffered from a big weight gain problem, or I've always been relatively small. So it wasn't so much about weight, although I did have extra fluff that I needed to lose. But, we all think that any kind of health issue or dietary issue immediately goes to having a weight problem. But that's not always the case. And it wasn't with me. My problem was my constipation, my digestion, and you can't see that from the outside looking in. And I had mental health issues, which you also can't really see as much as, for example, weight gain. So it's all these so-called invisible symptoms that I had and that are actually wrapped up in taboos in society that you don't talk about.
Right. Exactly.
And so I suffered in silence for a very long time.
Wow. So what meant you say, a few mental health issues? What was going on for you? What were you going through?
Well, in my 20s, I had terrible trouble with depressive episodes and was actually diagnosed with depression at the end of my 20s and medicated and followed by a psychiatrist, not even a psychologist, but a psychiatrist. And in a way, I can say now, because it was so long ago, because I'm in my
Mhm.
50s now, but in a way it was the lesson that I needed to really recognize the symptoms of sort of slipping towards the edge of that big black hole.
Oh, wow.
And so ever since then, I took the antidepressants for quite a few months, and that gave me the relief and the distance from that big black hole to be able to learn coping skills that have stood me in good stead
Right.
for the rest of my life. And luckily, I've still had my ups and downs, believe me, but I haven't been close to the edge of that big black hole since my late 20s.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Scary though, isn't it? Yeah,
It's scary.
absolutely.
And I remember lying in bed and literally staring at the ceiling, literally feeling like I could not get up, like I was nailed to the bed. I was so anxious, so depressed. I never want to feel that again. And
You
I
know,
haven't.
oh,
Mm.
wow. Wonderful. Oh, that's so, I mean, it's so inspiring because so many women do go through that. And, especially as, we age and we go through all the things we do go through, not just childbirth, but perimenopause and menopause and all those things that we as women have to go through. And the thing is, though, we don't have to suffer. So with regards to you personally, what age were you when you actually started to do your recognition of this fact that sugar was really, affecting you?
Yes. Well, as you read out in my bio, it wasn't until my mid-40s
Right.
I was ready to actually recognize that it may be something other than what the doctors were telling me it was. So first I dealt with infertility for years, and we finally managed to have our daughter with IVF. And that was in my late 30s.
Wow.
That was a separate issue. That in itself was very, very difficult. But my digestive issues had been hounding me all through my 30s and into my 40s. And I'm not shy about saying that I was going to the bathroom like once a week.
Whoa. So
Yeah,
much toxic buildup.
exactly.
Oh,
Absolutely toxic for your body and uncomfortable and painful. And you just feel so helpless. There's nothing like you try, but you can't force anything out.
mm,
So, and of course the doctors were telling me eat more fiber, eat more fiber, and it was making things worse. And unfortunately, fiber is not the answer universally to all of the world's problems.
right.
And it certainly wasn't for me. But of course, who was I to even question what the doctors were telling me? And I had to go to hospital and have enemas and all sorts of things.
Oh, my goodness.
And it was only when I talked to the nutritional therapist, and I didn't even know what one of those was at the time. She was in the States and I'm up here in Canada. Only when I talked to her, and she actually suggested something that no one had ever suggested and that I certainly wasn't ready to listen to. But she said, you know what? Try cutting out sugar and flour and sweeteners for 2 weeks. And I was like, excuse me? First of all, no. No,
Not
thank
giving up
you.
that chocolate.
Yeah. Second, this has nothing to do with anything that could improve my life. And it was like number 3, no.
There's a lot of no's in there.
Yeah, it's apparently my specialty to say no. And I resisted. And, because I could not see how that could help. As I said, in my bio, it's like I was feeling, pardon the pun, but I was feeling so crappy.
Mm-hmm.
There was no way that taking away my favorite comfort foods, I couldn't see a way that that could possibly help. I just thought she was crazy. And so, yeah, so you know what happened? Nothing.
Oh,
Nothing happened. Nothing got better because I wasn't changing anything.
right, right.
And then I finally, thanks to being slightly older in my 40s, finally got over myself and stopped resisting and said, look, give it a try. What have you got to lose? You've tried everything else. You've done what you've been told to do and that hasn't worked. How about trying something completely crazy? It's for 2 weeks. You know, what's the worst that could happen? So it's not like I threw out all of the sugar and the cookies and everything in my house because I knew.
How did you go about this? Because our listeners here will really want to know this because so many are struggling right now with this. I know they talk to me about it and I'm not an expert on it. So this is why I have you here today.
Well, yes, there's more of us than you would imagine and more of us than are willing to talk about this publicly. But I only said yes to this temporary experiment because I saw it as temporary. 2 weeks, you can do pretty much anything for 2 weeks. So I thought, give it a go. I'm quite adventurous and open-minded. And so obviously I didn't get rid of all the sugar in my house because I was going right back to it on day 15.
Oh, right. The ego.
I only said yes for the 2 weeks. I didn't say yes for a second more. So everything stayed in my house and I have to say with my personality, when I say no, but then when I say yes, it's 100%. And I jumped in 100%.
Wow.
And so it required of me to change all of my meals and my habits. My breakfast, which before was either toast or cereal or some kind of pastry, which even flour is a type of sugar. And she had said sugar, flour, and sweeteners.
Whoa.
So, yeah, it's like, well, what am I
Flour is sugar?
Flour, ground up grains, because they're ground up into powder, are absorbed or metabolized so much faster than the body than actual whole grains. And, they say whole grain bread, but there's no whole grains in there. They've been ground up, right? And the fact that they're ground up increases their surface level, which means that they're absorbed by the body and create a blood sugar spike, and then an insulin spike that much faster. And for all intents and purposes, even brown flour, but especially white flour, is metabolized by the body pretty much in the same way as sugar is.
Oh, my word. That is, whoa, that's mind-popping, really.
It is. And even bread that you may make at home or baked goods, the geographical location of where the flour is used has no bearing on how the body reacts to the flour.
Really?
Whether it's at home or whether it's some factory, it's still flour. It might be slightly better at home, but only very slightly. So my mind was also blown, and to sort of, I remember before I even said yes to this whole 2-week thing, I remember reading a few books like Wheat Belly, Grain Brain about grains and flour. And this was when my mind was first blown, of the first of many, many mind-blowing books and podcasts and documentaries where I thought, oh my gosh, how can this be?
Right.
How can I not know this? And you have to know that I have zero background in nutrition or even the sciences, I'm arts and, I'm languages and arts, and I went to a ballet school. I didn't go to a sciencey kind of school.
But you are also a very well-educated woman because you are a teacher.
Yes, I'm a college teacher. But despite all my university education, nobody had told me about how sugar and flour and even sweeteners are absorbed by the body. Certainly no doctor had. And because I'm not even sure anyone tells them.
Well, little birdies have told me that a family doctor, and a lot of even the specialties, they take maybe 7 days of their 7 years on nutrition.
Right.
7 days.
And I've heard 4 hours. So.
Yeah. So not much difference when you think of it.
And please make it clear, I want to make it clear I'm in no way disparaging the medical profession or the medical training that doctors get. But the bottom line is that nutrition and medicine are taught separately.
Right.
And even for nutritionists, I'm not even sure that, the metabolism of grains the distinction between grains and flour, the metabolism of sugar, and so on and the importance of insulin and the hormones for hunger, ghrelin and leptin and all those things. I'm not even sure they're taught for nutritionists, because I've not come across many, although my sample is small. I've not come across many who really know much about it.
Right. So when you go back to, starting those 2 weeks, take me back there. Sort of a timeline of what you went through. And
yes. So I was like, first of all, my first trip to the grocery store, I was completely at a loss for what to buy. Because as I went through the store and went up and down the aisles and picked up different boxes and packages and cans and so on, looked at the labels, the list of ingredients, they all seem to contain some form of added sugars, flour, starches, which usually processed starches, which are also metabolized just like sugar, very similar. And I was like, well, I just had to keep putting back these products on the shelves. So I was like, well, what am I going to eat? Ice cubes?
And can't even put sweetener in it.
Exactly. It just felt like every single item in the grocery store had some form of added sugar, starch, flour, sweetener, and that nothing was left. So, and even for someone like me who's got a university education in linguistics and speaks several languages and all the rest of it, I looked at the labels and the packaging. I couldn't make heads or tails of it. I felt like I just felt ignorant.
Well, and scary too, because hello, this is supposed to be something that's going to really help me, but yet there's nothing that's going to help me in these packaging.
Exactly. And it all seemed to be geared to getting you to buy it and not geared to actually giving you nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
So I took at least an hour, if not 2, at the grocery store, just picking stuff up and putting it back on the shelves and getting more and more confused and discouraged until I sort of went around the perimeter, the outskirts of the grocery store. And here in North America, grocery stores are designed in pretty much the same way wherever you are. And around the perimeter of the grocery store, the outside aisle are where the real whole foods are. The fruits, the vegetables, the produce. So the meats, the fish, the seafood, you have eggs, some dairy, and really the middle aisles, the central aisles are where all the non-foods are, or the processed foods, with a few notable exceptions like olive oil, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, I figured out eventually that the best way to go grocery shopping, because you can't really eat without going to a grocery store first, was to go around the outskirts of the grocery store.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I'm visualizing that right now. You're right. And not to get stuck in the middle.
Exactly. As I say, with a few exceptions. And funnily enough, after all that time analyzing labels, I figured it out, or started to, that real whole foods that are not processed by the processed foods industry usually don't even have labels.
Oh, wow. Ding.
Yeah. Ding, ding, ding.
Another epiphany here.
Absolutely. And so all that time wasted trying to figure out labels, you don't even need to.
It's golden.
Yeah.
It's golden, Netta.
And it's funny because we don't get that message or I've never got that message. Maybe I wasn't listening to the right people, but I never got that message to look for real whole foods. It was always, well, look at the nutrition facts labels and look at the list of ingredients. And I took one step back and thought, and figured out, well, wait a minute, if you don't need to look at all that stuff when you're buying real whole foods. Vegetables don't have nutrition facts labels,
We know what a carrot's supposed to do.
And it just doesn't need it, right? Because you only need those types of labels when the product has been somehow tampered with by the processed foods industry. So in the end, I took home some fruits, vegetables, fish, meat, then eggs, plain yogurt without all the additives, the sweet additives, and butter, cream. I don't really drink milk. And what came from that was that I had to change my meals.
Right.
So I don't call it cooking as much as ingredient assembly, right? Instead of
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it feels overwhelming for a lot of people. They say to me, well, I don't have all these hours to cook. And I'm like, yeah, no do I.
No, you're a very busy woman.
I'm a busy woman. I have a full-time job. I have a business. I have a family. I actually enjoy cooking, but only because I don't have to do it for very long every night. And it's not complicated.
Right.
So it's basically putting a whole load of stuff together. Some of it needs cooking, but it's like you don't have to make some kind of reduction and ruse and, you don't have to be a master chef.
Exactly.
So my breakfast ended up being savory. So either eggs or even leftovers from the night before. I think my first breakfast was something like eggs and cucumber. And I thought, I wonder if there's like a hidden camera in my dining room. And it's like, this is being broadcast and everyone's judging me for eating such a weird breakfast. Like, who eats that?
Netta's gone wild.
Yeah, Netta's out for lunch with her breakfast. And it felt weird. And the next weird thing that happened was that, usually around 10ish in the morning, I would get like a bit of a craving. And I would have a special drawer at my office where I'd keep all my sweet things.
Oh.
And then I'd sneak something chocolatey around 10 a.m. because I'd get a bit of a craving, a bit of an energy slump. So the weird thing that happened after this breakfast is I didn't get an energy slump.
Right away?
Pretty much.
Wow.
And I just worked through until lunchtime. And then I had lunch. And my lunch also didn't include any flour or sugar. So I can't remember if it was meat or fish. I had some kind of meat or fish and veggies.
Okay.
With butter on them because I love butter.
Right. It's good for people. And a lot of people don't agree, but I do.
Yeah. And, the nutritional therapist had explained to me that unprocessed fats or minimally processed fats like butter, that fat doesn't make you fat.
No.
And I didn't believe her. I just didn't believe her until my body made me believe her.
Exactly. The body always knows, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because the body doesn't read up on, some kind of scientific study that's been funded by the sugar industry.
Exactly.
Come to a conclusion that, the sugar industry wants it to come to. So the body just uses the food that you give it in its own way. And so that was a bit further down the line when I realized that my pants were getting looser. My extra pounds were melting away with no effort, no exercise on my part. And all in the strategic places where women want the fat to melt away.
Mm-hmm.
I was eating all this fat. It wasn't that much. It wasn't like keto, but it was still more than I was used to. And yet I was losing the fat off my body. So strange.
Amazing. Really. And so now with regards, at that point, did you notice apart from your body shifts, your mindset?
Yes. So the first few days were tough. It was like detox.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I had like the flu. And since read up about it, that, sometimes people do experience that. They call it like either the keto flu or the, sugar detox. And because your body's just used to running on glucose all the time, which is what sugar and flour break down into, whereas I wasn't giving my body all that sugar and flour that would break down into glucose. My body was just having a tough time metabolically adjusting to this new source of fuel, if you will, which was more proteins and fats, And so that switch for my body it took a few days, and it was quite difficult. But when you look back on it, it's been almost 9 years now.
Wow.
And a few days in a 9-year period, it's nothing.
Nothing. No.
So the second week, remember, this was only for 2 weeks.
You're right. Day 15, I'm buying a chocolate bar.
Yeah. The second week, I remember like getting up, springing up from my bed, which I'd never done before, not creaking up, but actually jumping up from bed and thinking, all right, let's get on with the day.
Wow.
Yeah. And sort of realizing, wow, my movements are more supple. My joints don't hurt. I don't have a headache. All these things I wasn't having. And what I did have was I felt like more enthusiasm, more energy, more mental clarity. And I looked at my skin and it was so it was clearer. And, my skin was clearer. My sinuses were clearer. Everything felt better.
And that's in less than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's funny because I kind of liked feeling better. And my digestion was slowly getting better as well. And it wasn't just cutting the sugar. I had to do other things as well, which, we can get to. But, to make a long story short, which is not my forte.
Keep speaking. People are going to love it.
To make a long story short, I liked feeling better so much. I said to the nutritional therapist on day 14, she says, okay, you can start, reintroducing this, that, and the other. And I said, no.
Oh my gosh. Oh, wow. She must have been like, what?
Well, this is Netta saying no again, but no to what I said yes to all my life, right? No, I don't want to bring back sugar and flour and sweeteners. Not yet. I'm actually going to do this for another week 3, and then week 4, and then week 5. And I don't know how many weeks it's been now, but it's almost 9 years.
Wow. That is amazing.
Mm.
And so with that, what can you walk me through a day of what you do eat?
Now?
Yes, now.
I would say that there are chapters in this period, for me, in this 9-year period. So what I do now was not necessarily what I did in like week 4 or week 17, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because life is life and it happens whether or not you eat sugar.
Right.
But actually what I found, one of the other things I found by not eating sweet foods or foods that stimulate my insulin, at least, because flour is not sweet technically. What I found was that not stimulating my insulin, which you produce to bring your blood sugar levels down, meant that I lost this kind of desperate hunger feeling that I'd always had.
Oh.
I always just wake up and I was like desperate to have breakfast. And if been too many hours in between meals, I was like antsy and what they call hangry, which is like a mixture of hungry and angry,
Right.
I couldn't hold off for only a few minutes. I needed to eat now.
Okay.
And what I was experiencing without sugar, flour, and sweeteners was the absence of this type of desperation to eat something.
Oh my.
And what I learned afterwards when I read up about it is that all it is your blood sugar levels are more stable, your insulin levels are more stable, and what we call hunger, this desperate feeling, I've got to eat now, don't you talk to me until I've had something to eat. This desperate kind of feeling has nothing to do with hunger.
Oh.
In fact, all it is these blood sugar spikes and crashes, which I wasn't having anymore.
Oh my goodness. And so many people go through that.
Right. And it was so weird because when I was eating 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day, if you count the meals plus the snacks, I was getting this desperate feeling that I used to call hunger. And now I wasn't getting that. I didn't need to eat 4, 5, 6 times a day. I was actually not even particularly interested in eating 3 times a day. And so twice was enough for me. And I thought, well, how can I feel less hungry when I eat less often?
Right.
More hungry when I eat more often.
Right.
And then I thought, well, hang on, maybe it's not even hunger. Turns out it's not.
Fascinating.
Turns out most of us in the Western world are overfed and undernourished.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah, it makes biological sense. Doesn't make sense for the food industry.
No, or the label industry.
But it makes sense biologically because if you're eating a whole lot of junk food full of flour and sugar and God knows what else ingredients, and you're eating lots of these foods or often, your body's still undernourished.
Right.
And will send you the signals, leptin and ghrelin are the hormones that are involved in hunger and fullness. So ghrelin will send a signal to say, I'm hungry, feed me. But if you're not actually nourishing yourself, then you keep getting this signal. And some people become leptin resistant, and leptin is the hormone that signals satiety when you're full. And so they don't even recognize that they're full. It's like they can't stop eating. And actually, I read since then is that a lot of the foods, the processed foods from the processed foods industry are engineered to be crave-worthy, to be addictive, so that you can't stop eating them.
Henceforth, the genetically modified.
Yeah, it can be genetically modified, but more often than not, they're just like these ingredients and the mixes that they make. They call the bliss point in a lab that they spend millions of dollars developing so that we consumers have this reaction of, our brains lighting up and, the dopamine hitting.
The dopamine, yeah.
And we're like, I got to get a hit. I got to get more. And it's so peaceful not to have that when you're eating real whole foods.
Amazing, because so many people, like I say, especially women, especially with the cycles we go through, for so many women, the cravings are just, it takes over, right? It completely takes over.
I totally agree. And I totally remember and can relate to that. And it's funny because we think that, I'm having a craving. I'll eat whatever I'm craving and that'll calm the craving down. And just like I thought, hang on, if you take away all those foods, my favorite foods, comfort foods, then I'm going to suffer even more.
Right.
And I was telling you, it was only a question of 3 or 4 days for me personally, where I was kind of in the so-called detox phase. But after that, if you don't feed your cravings, the brain and the hormone system in your body, and I don't mean the sex hormones, I mean the hunger hormones, they allow, and your neurotransmitters, they allow your whole system to just calm down. And this is what I call freedom from cravings.
Oh, and so many people could benefit from that because the world we live in now, there's so much going on and so much stress. So it's an added, onto what already a person may be experiencing. And so then you've got that compounded. So it's easy to reach for and just snack and chew or drink or whatever, right? To give that dopamine hit.
Exactly. Yeah. And nobody taught us any other kind of coping skill than food or sugar. Nobody's fault. I'm not blaming.
No, exactly. But it's just a reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so this is what I teach. It's funny because I'm an English teacher. English is a second language for my profession. I've been in English for 30 years, but I take my teaching experience and I've applied it to teach how to live day in, day out, sugar free. And the emphasis is on the word free, not on the word sugar.
Right. Because isn't that really what we all want, is to feel free and peaceful?
Well, people who come to me for help, that's what they want.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say that everybody wants that.
No, but I'm just speaking in terms of not talking about me here, but with self-sabotage, right? The work I do. Yeah. I mean, this is what people want. They want to change their patterns and they want an interruption to what's creating all this turmoil. So in my work too, it's the peace and the freedom.
Exactly. And not everybody realizes that's what they want or that's how to get that. And your work on self-sabotage, because you were on my podcast.
I know, right?
Yeah. And
great.
And I took inspiration from your work on self-sabotage and I integrated that into my program. Did you know?
Wonderful. No, I think that's fabulous. Great.
Yeah. Yay.
Yay.
Because some of the things that we say to ourselves, I call it the loophole attitude. Mm-hmm. Where we're like, I'll start on Monday. I'll start on the 1st of the month. Or, I'll have a little exception because fill in the blank excuse, and we find these loopholes or we look for them. And once you look for them, you'll find them.
Oh, absolutely.
To self-sabotage, right? And I mean, I've done it. I still do it for other things, but for sugar, I don't do it anymore. And I can teach how not to do it anymore for sugar because this connection, this emotional connection that we have with sugar can be broken and we can get to a place of neutrality with sugar.
Lovely.
This isn't about demonizing sugar because hating sugar is still a relationship with sugar.
Exactly.
Where I sort of guide people step by step is to a place of neutrality where sugar's just off your radar. You don't need it to be happy. And that may feel or seem impossible.
No. And that's why I have you here today, because this is so important. And I mean, you are such a role model for this. And I'm just so grateful. And I'm wondering, you have to admit, or I see it all the time now. And my concern, and there's nothing I can really do about it except share, this podcast with people and hopefully for women to embrace it and to contact you and their children. This is my concern. There's so many obese children. It horrifies me. It's not a judgment. It's just, I look at it as long term. If this continues, what is their health going to, not do for them?
Yeah. Well, if it continues like it on the trajectory that we're on, it's not good. The prognosis is not good.
No.
I think that as consumers, we have like our job is to educate ourselves, and it doesn't require a PhD. What I mean by educate ourselves doesn't mean you have to go to university. It's to be able to listen and understand or have it explained to you in a way that helps to understand just the basics of human biology, like I just mentioned today.
Exactly.
And once you get that's if the consumer or the citizen feels empowered with that knowledge, that is pretty much kind of objective knowledge for human biology, right? Disinterested, objective knowledge about how the body works. Once we have that, once we also recognize that unfortunately that it's a systemic problem, the whole food system in the Western world is such that the cheaper foods, at least at the till, the cheaper foods are the processed foods.
Right.
And the main ingredients in processed foods are sugar, flour, and vegetable oils or seed oils, which are highly, highly refined and could be inflammatory for a lot of people. So the system itself is built so that the cheaper foods are these highly processed foods. And the belief we have as consumers is, I can't eat unprocessed foods because I don't have any money.
Exactly.
Right? That unfortunately is very common and actually not quite true. I'm not denying that people don't have a big budget for food. That I get. But actually, eating food that is unprocessed and nutritious and that fills you up is actually no more expensive than eating all the junk food and the processed foods that not only is not non-nutritious, but it doesn't fill you up. It actually feeds your cravings. So you eat more and more and you buy more and more. At the end of the day, eating 4, 5, 6 times a day for so-called cheap processed foods that don't fill you up or don't give you nutrition or energy versus eating twice or 3 times a day for eating foods that actually give you nutrition and energy. It's actually the same price, or I would say even cheaper, to actually eat food that's nutritious.
Absolutely. And then think of it this way. At least that's the way I think of it is, what am I going to save in needing to make trips to the doctors and prescriptions that aren't going to work anyway for me, right?
Exactly.
And then load up with all that. And then, you're, and the time involved in that, especially with children, if they're getting sick, and being home, and then you have to miss work or you can't find a babysitter and a lot of this is exactly what you're saying. It's nutrition.
Yeah. Yes. And I think we have a sort of collective view of nutritious foods being boring.
Mm.
And thanks to the processed foods industry, and here comes my British sarcasm, thanks to them, we believe that their food is fun and actual food is boring.
Right.
And when you start from that premise, of course you're going to go to the cereals and the snack packs and whatever for your kids. Plus we use food as a way to show love for our kids.
Right.
And so the belief is, these are all, beliefs that can be changed, but the belief is, if I take away these types of foods, the candies, the treats, whatever, it's equivalent to taking away my love from my children. And I refuse to do that.
Exactly.
So we work a lot on all of these beliefs and dig down to see where they come from and how valid they actually are.
So this is all in your program?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. And your program runs
all the time.
All the time?
Yeah.
It's open all the time?
Yeah.
And how long is it?
It's 12 weeks.
Okay.
With weekly calls for my guidance.
Right.
And then a year included of support.
Okay. So tell us more a little bit. If I was to, contact you and do, myself this amazing favor and save my life, and have a good one as well while I'm saving it, what would be involved, Netta?
Well, usually people find me through either my podcast, Life After Sugar, or through social media, and then, I write to them. If they're on my email list, they get an email a couple of times a week, and they usually find me there, and they take some time to get to know me, as it were.
Yeah. Build relationship.
Channel. Yeah. To build a relationship. And when they do reach out, I won't let them buy my program until we've had a chat together.
Oh, lovely. Okay.
To see if it's a good fit. Because yes, it's for women over 50, but actually I've had women, as I say, in their 20s, in their 30s, all the way up to their 70s doing the program. It's not so much the age, but usually we get to our 50s before we realize I need help.
Right.
And before we're sort of able to ask for help, because we have spent all of our lives mothering others or grandmothering.
Right. Both.
Yeah. And so that's why I say, it's especially for women over 50, only because this is when we start really looking after ourselves a bit more. We have the bandwidth to do that.
Right.
So I ask people to book a call with me, and we have a chat for half an hour or so. And I explain the program. We go through their needs and their challenges. And then when they join the program is when I'm a teacher. So it's pretty rare in the sugar addiction world, as it were, for a program to be led by a teacher and not a nutritionist or functional doctor or a sugar addiction specialist. I'm none of those things. I'm a teacher, and I've been living a sugar-free life for almost 9 years. And so I know what it's like day in, day out.
Exactly.
And I know how to structure a program so that you do the stuff, right? Because a lot of people come into the program, they know most of the info. They know what sugar does to the body. They know about insulin and leptin and ghrelin. They know about intermittent fasting or eating less often. They know it all. They can't do it, but they know about it.
That's the key, right? That's the key.
And that's my job, is to gently guide them step by step to actually implement the knowledge that they have, to actually live their life sugar-free and have fun doing it.
Well, the thing is, I have to say kudos to you, girl, because yes, you say, you're a teacher, but the thing is, here is the experience. You've walked this, you walk your talk. A lot of, nutritionists and here again, there are a lot of doctors, a lot of people, programs that they put out there. They haven't lived it.
Mm. In fact, they often come to me for help living
Exactly. Exactly. So,
which I'm happy to give.
Well, of course. I mean, this is what I'm saying. So who better to come to than somebody who walks their talk? I mean, that's what it's all about. It's, transformation. You can't give it to someone if you haven't had it yourself.
Yes.
And you can't even give them the transformation. You can guide them to it. Right.
Exactly.
So,
yes.
what a blessing you are.
Thank you.
To us.
Well, it's really a question of, we've got enough info out there. Right. You want info about anything I've talked about today? Just Google it.
Oh yeah, Dr. Google YouTube. Is great.
Yeah, YouTube or my podcast. You got all the info you need. That's not the issue. No. Information is not the issue. Implementation.
Exactly. It's and being accountable.
Right.
Yes. The accountability portion, which a lot of people just, like I say, don't walk their talk, and then they can't help you with accountability because of that. So, and they can't even help you with the implementation because they haven't done it themselves.
Right. And I think, now it's been almost 9 years, been through all kinds of experiences being sugar, including, a pandemic. Apparently there was a pandemic at some point. And
apparently.
Apparently got through that sugar-free as well, in the sense that life happens whether or not you eat sugar, real life. And so being sugar-free allows you to actually cope with life rather than numbing your emotions, your coping skills, or so we tend to think, oh my gosh, life is difficult enough as it is, let alone taking away my coping mechanisms, which is sugar or chocolate or name it, right? Whereas the opposite happens to be true. And people discover in the program that, wait a minute, I'm actually dealing with life's curveballs like a grown-up, actually dealing with it, and not at the first opportunity, not avoiding dealing with difficult emotions or difficult relationships, and not numbing difficult emotions.
Right.
And they actually feel more empowered, whereas before they felt powerless.
Absolutely. It's about taking control of how you can react, right? That's the only control we have in our life anyway, is our reactions, how we react to things, right? So it's taking that and knowing and taking ownership.
Totally.
Of this vessel that we have. And the beautiful thing about it is, if we, when I used to teach youth, especially athletes, I would give them the metaphor of, cause a lot of they were guys and they were soccer players or hockey players, and they wanted Porsches and they want Lamborghinis and all this. And so I used to use the metaphor of a car. What you put in your body is you can liken it to what you put in your car. If you're driving a really expensive car, which our vehicle is our body is a very expensive car. And you put crap in, what's going to happen, right? So if you
Really?
put that in your car, your car's not going to last long. You're going to blow the engine. You're going to, crash it or whatever. So yeah, it's just coming to ownership of that owning. This is my temple. This is my body, and what I do with it, I'm going to have an outcome, right? So it's the old garbage in, garbage out.
Yes. Yes. And then, you add the emotional piece to that, where
Yep.
if it were just a question of fuel, and we didn't have this emotional connection to sugar and comfort foods, we just change fuel and off we go, right? We
Right.
drive into the sunset. But, it's really a very deep emotional connection that we have to food, and rightly so, that makes it more complex than
Right.
just changing what you eat. So people come in to the program with me thinking we're going to talk about eat this, eat that, don't eat this, don't eat that. You're allowed, you're not allowed to eat this, that, and the other. And actually they think we're going to talk about sugar, but actually we talk about them and we talk about life. And it ends up being a lot deeper than just that food and sugar.
It's beautiful. It's like amazing, because that's probably for a lot of people, it's the first time they're actually being acknowledged.
Right.
And including in their life, their feelings and their emotions and all that, right? Because like you said, up until 50, a lot of us, we just don't. We're here, there, everywhere, except here, here, right?
Yeah.
And so to get through all of what's going on. Yeah, absolutely. I've been there, done it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, I think this is a wonderful place to send, out into the world what needs to be heard through you. And I will definitely be posting, all your information of contact, and so that people can be in touch, because I know there are a lot of people that want to be in touch. This is why I was so honored to be able to have you on as a guest today, because this information that you have, the experience, the implementation, everything that you do, you walk your talk, girl. And I'm just so grateful for you being here today. And I know our listeners today are going to be so grateful as well, because it's so needed.
Thank you.
You're so needed. Your work and your experience and your love for assisting others is something that comes across. And I'm so grateful that you do what you do.
That's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I will let you know when this is going live.
Thank you very much.
All right, Netta, take care. Thank you so much. Lots of love.
Bye.
Bye-bye.